Hello again. Here's another question for the yes or no treatment. Two sides to every question. This is a current one, the one that's causing quite a bit of fuss here and there. And the question is this: are the anti-vaxxers right? Well, there are a lot of people around who don't want to get vaccinated against the COVID virus. They have an objection to vaccinations in general, and this is a phenomenon that has been around almost since vaccinations started. Back in the mid 1900s, when Jenner first invented the idea of vaccination, in this case against smallpox, right away there was opposition from the clergy, from experts, from all kinds of people who saw this as intrusion, saw this as dangerous, saw it as unhealthy, a whole variety of objections. So we've always had this. And it was recently kind of boosted again by the whole dispute over the MMR vaccine, mumps, measles, and rubella, because it was thought that there was some link between that vaccine and the emergence of autism in young kids. So vaccinations have always been a kind of a hot subject for most people. They kind of accept them in the normal course of business, but there are quite a few people who don't. So let's take a look at some of the arguments. So let's start with the yes group. Yes, the anti-vaxxers are right. Those who, in other words, object to vaccination. So here are some of their arguments. Well, first of all, there's the idea that nobody's going to tell me what to do. I have my own freedom of action as a citizen of this country, assuming that you live in a democracy, and the choice is mine, and I choose not to do it. So forget about forcing me. I'm simply not going to cooperate. Another position on this is, well, they kind of rushed the whole thing through, didn't they? They cut corners. Usually takes years and years for a new drug of any kind, including vaccinations, to get on the market. But this one went from the very start to vaccines being available on the market in less than a year. Dangerous stuff. Not enough time. So what that says to me is we don't even know whether this thing is going to work. So I'm going to let somebody else suffer if it doesn't work or makes you even sicker. I'll just wait for a while and see what happens. And maybe some year or so from now, if it seems to have been okay, seems to have worked, hasn't caused any trouble, well, then maybe I'll reconsider my position. Another objection is I don't want my DNA to be altered. I'm not quite sure how DNA works. All I know is that my DNA is unique to me, which is why it's used to identify criminals because of their unique DNA signature. And because it's unique, it's pretty special. I don't want some drug getting in there and knocking it around and changing it. Who knows what it might do. Plus, I just simply object to the notion of my DNA being altered. It's an intrusion. Another objection is that, of course, there have been previous disasters in vaccinations. I suppose some people remember the thalidomide crisis, which was a drug which resulted in terrible, disfiguring birth defects. And we are still coming off the aftermath of that and before we caught it, it damaged a lot of people. So this is what vaccinations can do. One has to be really careful and vigilant about these sorts of chemicals altering your system. Another objection is this: I don't believe at all, in principle, of chemicals being put into my body to change what kind of person I am. I only believe in natural remedies and things that come from plants out in the wild. And early man understood all this stuff, and more primitive societies get along very well without all these chemicals, and so will I. And then finally, this is just another example of greedy pharmaceutical companies making a lot of money out of vaccines. God knows how much they're charging for these vaccines. It's nice for it to be free for us, but I am sure the government is paying top whack for them. And then of course there's the testing apparatus and so forth. So they're getting rich on the back of us and on the shareholder. And I just don't want to help them either. Well, that's a pretty good list of reasons that people might object to getting vaccinated, and might conclude that the anti-vaxxers are right. But what about those who say, no, they're wrong, we need to get vaccinated, it's the sensible thing to do? What are their arguments? Well, to begin with, all of those arguments that the anti-vaxxers give for not wanting to be vaccinated are just simply wrong. They depend upon bogus science and so forth. For example, the notion that the MMR vaccine causes autism is just bad science. It is one of those logic problems known as cum hoc ergo propter hoc. With this, therefore, because of that, it confuses correlation with causality. And the fact is that autism becomes obvious at about 12 months for toddlers, at about the same time they get the jab. So people conflate the two and ascribe the cause of one to another. It just isn't true. It's just bad science. And it's a kind of hysteria that spreads amongst conspiracy theorists. And in fact, every competent medical authority around the world has agreed that this MMR causing autism thing is just simply wrong. It's just bad science. So anyone who believes this is really swimming against the tide on this one. Next, the notion that your DNA can be altered, once again, is wrong. These vaccines operate on RNA, which is a messenger device of some sort which transmits the information to the cells and to the DNA, but the DNA itself is not altered. So that's, once again, a kind of an alarmist idea that sprung up somewhere, and just simply isn't true. Furthermore, the notion that it was all done too fast is wrong. All of the necessary steps in clinical testing have been taken by these drug companies producing these candidates for the solution of the coronavirus problem, and of course some of them are stumbling and haven't made it yet. Others have. But the fact that it was done so fast was done out of necessity, but thoroughly nonetheless. Many things were done in parallel. Financial risks were taken by producing the product before all of the results were in, simply because we had to be ready to go when the tests were over. So the fact that it was done fast is not an issue. Safety and efficacy was simply not compromised. And looking back to the thalidomide case long ago, oh dear, what a terrible result that was. Well, it was before we had the kind of testing discipline that we do now, and a thalidomide situation simply couldn't have happened. It would have been caught and it would have been stopped. So you're talking about the old days here, and a mistake was certainly made then, but that does not apply to today's drug approval processes and to the products that are now being put on the market. Quite apart from these bogus arguments, there's the whole question of whether or not refusing to cooperate with mass vaccination programs is an antisocial, destructive, nasty thing to do, really, because really defeating these coronavirus depend upon what has really been referred to as the herd effect, where virtually everybody is vaccinated so that there aren't people out there to continue to pass the disease around. Anyone who refuses to cooperate in that is basically fighting against the whole community and doing it a disservice. So that's something really to be ashamed of. It isn't just a macho statement that you're going to do what you want. You're actually attacking the community and attacking the notion of the solution to this problem. So that's pretty bad. And then finally, we have to realize that vaccination itself has been hugely successful over the years. It's virtually eliminated some diseases, certainly in the Western world, like smallpox, like tuberculosis, polio, and so forth. At the same time, it's eliminated some very difficult veterinary livestock diseases. So the fact is that vaccination works, and that simply can't be denied. The facts are there, the results are there. So to suggest that it doesn't is just wrong and a form of denial. Well, those also are some pretty strong arguments in favor of vaccination and against the notion of the anti-vaxxers being right. What is my take on all of this? Well, as you can probably guess, I line up with the second group, the group that say you should get yourself vaccinated. What we really are seeing with a lot of anti-vaxxers is a kind of a mentality similar to people who believe in bogus science of all kinds, like homeopathy, for instance, or some who believe, for example, that they've been abducted by aliens, or they belong to religious cults where they're going to be transported into outer space when the Day of Judgment comes. There are a lot of these things. President Trump actually exploited a lot of this craziness. And furthermore, my wife this morning was telling me about an interview she heard with an eminent virologist and epidemiologist, and who also pointed out that one of the hurdles to get over in introducing things like this is the abject ignorance of a lot of people about any kind of science, about medicine, about the world around them. They simply jump onto any bandwagon that comes by that sounds appealing. There are just a lot of stupid people out there who are ignorant, and we can be kind of tolerant and smile sweetly and say, well, poor dears, that's the way they are. But in this case, they're being antisocial and destructive. So they need to be put right. They need to be informed. They need to be taught. They need to be given some sensible guidance along these lines so that they can resume their place in the community and not be destructive. So what's the story? Anti-vaxxers, grow up. It's time to get vaccinated. Okay, well, that'll certainly insult the anti-vaxxers, but that's the way I feel, and those of you who are similar to my way of thinking, I hope you liked it. The usual thing: give me a like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, comment, and so forth. And I will see you with the next one. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.